Hey, Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good deal. All's good up there in Monument?
Yeah, I left the house yesterday. It looked like winter, and I got to Lewis Palmer High School and it was springtime.
Yeah. Welcome to springtime in Colorado, right?
Yeah, we got about 6 inches, and 3 miles away they had nothing.
Oh my God. Wait, that happens to us up here in Rock River, and we're part way up the hill. And sometimes we'll get 2 or 3 inches, and by the time we get to Woodman and I-25, there's nothing. And the vice versa happens too. We got nothing, they got 3 inches. So hello, Mr. Egbert. How are you today? Rick Hoover. Wow. There he is.
Howdy, howdy, everyone.
Hey, buddy.
I tried to come to this meeting last week.
Herman, and then Rich Zamora, and then Andy and I would be sort of a.
Was it a short meeting, Rick?
Yeah, Rick told me that maybe I ought to come back this week for a longer meeting. That he'd get the materials out to me by last Thursday.
There you go.
He did exactly that.
Well, glad you could figure it out, Reb. That's good. Oh, he's not connected yet. Hey, Reb, glad you could figure it out.
I don't want to comment. You don't understand. I had to get Rick to print my thing. I got a brand new printer I had to order, and I couldn't hook it up. And I had to talk to CenturyLink to find out what had happened. They changed the Wi-Fi and everything else. Never mind. I've got a problem with CenturyLink, okay? Not the printer. And I followed the instructions 17 times. I don't know how many pieces of paper that I got told that I wasn't using the right information.
I'm telling you.
If you want to talk to somebody in person, you just better sit and pray that they may call you back. I'm still waiting for a call from yesterday morning back from CenturyLink to explain how they've screwed it up.
Yeah, getting customer service these days is quite the challenge sometimes.
Well, this morning I talked to somebody from the Philippines. So first of all, she's the first non-American that I was halfway able to understand. Local people.
Testing.
Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to those of another country.
Yeah, it's a global issue. Is that Mike Chavez?
Hello. Hello.
Hello, David Chestnutt.
Hey, finally. Now if I can figure out my video.
Lower left corner, second button in.
Yeah, I've tried that, but for some reason it's not coming on.
You have a lens
Hey,
cap?
Reb's here.
You have
Hey.
a camera plugged in?
Yeah, Ed, we were just teasing him about he finally got that figured out. All right, so we're about 3 or 4 minutes after 1. Looks like we've got a quorum, but Jessica, you want to take roll and let us know what the status is, please?
Sure. All right. So I'm just going to go right down the list as we always do. I'll name off everybody by the first name that I see here. If I miss you, let me know at the end. You don't have to say here or anything. So I'm going to get started. I can see Scott, Ed, Reb, Steve, Ann, Jim, Tom, other Jim, David Chestnutt, Rick,
Yes.
Ryan, Lauren, Larry, Richard, Dave, Rick, Bev, and the staff from member governments and citizens. Is there any CAC members that joined that I did not catch? So show a quorum. The absences that I can see is Tony, Karen, Joan, Cindy, Jean, and Carlos.
And several of those have some excused absences. So, okay, so I guess given them that, all of the alternates can vote. Rick, is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay, so all alternates can vote. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Just a
And
quick reminder, just to make sure you state your name when you make a motion. That way it's recorded. And other than that, we're good. We're good to go. And mute yourself if you're not talking.
yeah, mute yourself so we just limit the background noise. Thank you. So we've established a quorum. Again, all alternates can vote unless someone shows up unexpectedly here. Do I hear a motion? First of all, thank everyone for being here and welcome. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Scott Barnhart, so moved.
Jim,
Second, Ed Dills.
Ed Dills, second. Okay, thank you. Any, all those in favor, say aye.
Oh,
Wait, oh.
wait.
Richard, you're muted, buddy. There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd like to propose an alternate motion that rather than approving the motion, the agenda as prepared, I would like to propose that the item subject PPRTA-3 workshop be moved up after the financials. So I make that motion.
What's the rationale for that?
The rationale to it is that while we still have, say, another month that we have to finish matters, every time that we have discussed this item, which is, I think, one of the most important items that we do as a group, we never finish. And this is a very
Can you hear me
long memo. It is very well done. I've reviewed it pretty closely. I've got a mixture of thoughts about it and intend to speak on it. And I hope that every member here is able to voice their views and whether they like it as is or want to modify it. And if it stays at the end of it and things run the way they usually do, Jim, no disrespect, then we're not gonna come anywhere near finishing it.
Okay, so there's a motion to change the agenda.
Jim,
Yeah.
did he say after the financials or after
Yes.
the budget?
After,
If we don't get through the budget, it goes on to the public hearing at the next board meeting, which is next Wednesday.
No, he said after the budget, Bev.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll
I thought he
accept
said
that.
financials.
I'll
Okay,
accept after the budget.
Jim, before you put that to a vote, ask a question I want to add something agenda.
Go ahead.
I'd like to change item A from information to recommendation. And the purpose is they're going to present the same thing they presented 30 days ago, but with different wording or whatever. And I don't want to be, quote, abdicating our fiduciary duties to the board and say that my vote last month should be the same this month. There is only one item, but is listed as an information item. It is the same item that was presented to us last month, but there's different wording. So I would, perhaps after the different wording, the vote could change. So I would like it to be a recommendation versus an information item.
Okay, so we have two motions. Reb, on yours, we can make that recommendation and change from information to recommendation when we're discussing that item versus doing it now, based on the consensus of the organization, of the group. So we can address that when we're having that discussion versus doing it now.
Could I ask a question before you pull the thing or put it up? The point that I was making is, if it's just information, you don't pay as much attention to it. If it's a recommendation, quote, you personally, and I don't mean Jim personally, but the 17 people that voted during the last month won't pay as close attention. There may be something that's said that will make you change your mind, and I'm not predicting that it will or won't. But you presented the fact that it was approved last month. But it was approved last month because of what was presented. What is presented this month, you don't know what's presented.
Jim, this is Tom. I went back and looked, and what we approved last month or recommended last month never went to the board. And now we have new documentation this month. And so we should consider it as a new recommendation rather than information.
Okay, so I wasn't going to discuss this now, but being that we're in this discussion, we need to come back to Richard's recommendation. But so with the city recommendation on 6A, we had three choices. Do nothing. Actually not present it to the CAC, and it just goes straight back to the board because we've already seen it. 2, present it back to the CAC with the revised information, have a discussion about it, and then either, or we could make it a recommendation, review the whole thing and vote again. As the chair, I made the choice to present it as an information item. And that if during the discussion, there was enough information and a consensus of the CAC that we wanted to change it from an informational item and rechange our position on the project to the board, we could do that at the time that we were having the discussion. So that was a decision that I made when we were addressing the agenda. So if the group wants to make it and review the whole thing over again and put it up for another vote to make a recommendation, we'll go with the group's consensus on what that is. But that's the rationale behind why it is an informational item versus a recommendation. So any further discussion on that? We still have a motion to change it. I just wanted to provide you the information of why it is in the position that it's in. So let's go back to Richard's recommended change. Richard, one, we don't need to do this in one session. It's not expected that we would do it in one session. We have a couple months to do this. And so we really don't need to have when we get into this discussion about this, the ability of the member governments to put together their list kind of drives the timeline, but we don't really need to have everything on the final list done until about April of next year. So if it takes more than 1 month to go back through all this, that's not a big deal. And so I think we could probably get through item 6 and the contracts and stuff relatively quickly and still have plenty of time to discuss this matrix where it is. But that's my input. I'll let other people speak to Richard's amendment. Hearing none, we have an amendment on,
This is Tom. I second Richard's amendment.
you second it to move it up as,
Yes.
as 6A.
Yes.
No, I differ. Could I ask a question? Is it not going to be, for the sake of discussion, after 5B, and we have a 6A already?
So maybe a 5.5.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Any further discussion? And then I have to go to the people who made the motion to approve the agenda to see if they're willing to accept a modification to their agenda.
On the second, I am.
And I'm willing to.
Yeah, on the first I am, if that's the will of the group.
I am.
So Scott, would you accept both amendments, one amendment,
Yes,
both amendments?
I think just Richard's amendment.
Okay. For the record, then would you restate your amendment or your motion, please?
I move that we approve the agenda with the revision that the item 7B be moved up to right after item 5B.
Okay. For the second motion of changing recommendation to information, is the group okay with making the decision to leave it as information and changing it at the time we have that discussion, or do you want to change it now?
I think we should change it at the time of discussion, personally.
Any other feedback?
Hey, Jim, this is Ryan Bissiger. I second what Scott is recommending.
Okay. Reb, are you okay with that?
Not really, but that's fine. Basically, all I wanted, if you'd seen the agenda and it was listed as a recommendation, you would treat it differently than as basically you're going to hear something and not pay close attention to it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, it seems the membership has looked at it, and so let's go with the modified motion. Do I have a second for Scott's modified motion to approve the agenda as modified?
Did Richard approve it? He made the motion.
Ed, were you the second? You're muted, Ed.
Initially, I was, but I'm in favor of what Reb said. I agree with his comments. So if I second what Scott said, then I'm overlooking part of what I would agree with what Reb said. So
Okay.
Hey, Jim,
awkward.
I heard Ryan support Scott's reconsideration or framing of the amendment or the
I did too.
motion.
Okay.
So I think that's her second.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes.
Jessica's shaking her head, yes, so, okay, so we have a motion to approve the agenda, move item 7B up to after 5B. And so all those in favor of that mod say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And Jess,
And Reb, you're opposed, so motion carries. We'll discuss that. And so if you haven't looked at item 6A, look at it now while we're talking about the other stuff. Okay, so without any further ado, before we move on, I would like to welcome Ryan Vissiger. Did I pronounce that? Bissiger. Did I
Yeah,
pronounce-
Bissiger, you got it right, Jim.
Bissiger. Invite Ryan to the meeting. So welcome, Ryan, and thank you for your wanting to be on the committee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm in if you want to add me to vote in.
Oh, hey, Tony. Welcome. Thanks.
You too. See you later.
I'm sorry, who was that? Okay.
That was Erica.
Okay, Erica, did you say something?
So
You're muted, so we can't hear you.
I didn't have my mute on. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Okay. So item number 3, any public comment from any members for items not on the agenda?
I just have one quick one.
Go ahead, Rick.
On this muting deal, I have been reading about this Zoom thing. If you use your space bar, put yourself on mute and then hit the space bar, that will take you off. And then when you release the space bar, it'll put you back on mute.
Yes, that is correct. All right.
Oh, thank you. I never knew that. Here I've been a Zooming fool in my Zoom cocoon in my Zoom room for a year and had no idea. So
Yeah.
using the space bar.
Well, there you go, Dave. Any members other than the committee that have any comments for public comments for items not on the agenda? All right. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes for April 7th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Larry. I move for approval of the minutes from
Thank you,
last
Rick.
month's meeting.
Second.
And Tom Biersma, thank you. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, financials, Beverly.
All right, Jessica will share the screen with those. Thank you, Jessica.
Can't hear you, Bev.
Okay, I just said thank you to Jessica for sharing the screen. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in February, we received 9,549,000. And so we were 2,338,000 above the monthly budget, or 32.4%. And then on page 2, let's see. We were ahead of last February by 1.2 million, or 14.5%. And the city was ahead, I think, by 18%, but we had a better January than they did. So all in all, quite a good year. And so as you know, we're adding $11 million to the budget amendment, and that will that's reflected here with our good numbers. So does anybody have any questions about the financials?
I've got a comment, Bev. It looks like that the trend over the last couple of years has been a little bit down in February going to March, but that January to February is a little steeper this year. So any good year, good numbers, but any insight into why that may be a little steeper than normal?
Well, I don't really know this firsthand, but you know, we're still receiving monies from prior year internet sales.
Oh, okay.
So we don't look quite the same from year to year.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, thank you. All right. Where are we? Financials. Okay. So the budget amendment. So Bev, you want to take on the budget?
And Jessica's gonna move up that item. Okay, let's get to, I don't think I can control it myself. Jessica, can I control this myself to move up the pages?
Let me see. I'll have to try to give you remote control of my screen. Give me a second here.
Okay.
Bev, you can go in and hit her under view options at the upper and request remote control. And then she can grant it to you from there, I think.
Don't ever put me in charge of this. Don't laugh, Jim.
Okay, I think I have it. All righty, into the meat of this. Okay, so on this page, we're showing the 2020 revenue carryover. So we had an additional $19 million worth of gross sales and use taxes. And then the other items just net out to this $18,748,000. And that should say 2020 revenue carryover to 2021. Sorry about that. So then the allocations follow to the member governments, and they incorporated those into this amendment. Then the next thing we did was, add $11 million worth of new sales and use taxes to this year. And so I have to take out a little bit of administrative expenses, and this 110,000 go to the engineering estimates that we're going to start doing for the third round of capital projects. And then an increase in the reserve of 1.1 million. So then this budget amendment allocates the 9,790,000 to the member governments in this amendment. Let me get, it's kind of funky using this. Moves fast sometimes, and not so fast, maybe get used to it a little bit. So these next pages then just show you the expenditure carryover. So it's unspent expenditures from the prior budget. Then the next column, the 2020 revenue carryover. And then the next column, the original budget, the next column, the additional 11 million and how it's allocated to the line items. And so then the total is the budget that you'll be recommending for approval today. Let me get down to the first member governments. Whoa, okay. So Metro is the first, Metro Transit is the first item. And I don't know if there's somebody from Transit that wants to talk about this.
Bev, sure. This is Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. So with the $2.3 million in revenue above budget, we're proposing to put a little over 2.2 million of that towards service improvements and $135,000 to in one-time money to PPACG to help them further implement the HSP program. Regarding the service improvements, we've been doing a lot of work to identify and have over the last several years to identify if money would fall from the sky, where would we like this money to go? And the 7 items we have identified here, Route 11 is suffering from some on-time performance issues on the weekends. We've already fixed the issues we had during weekdays a couple years ago, but we're continuing to have issues with keeping our vehicles on time. There's an awful lot of redevelopment on the South Nevada corridor. Just a lot of congestion on the weekends, and it's just nearly impossible to keep those vehicles on time. Item 2, we are proposing, and we've been working a lot with Manitou Springs on this to provide 1 year's worth of subsidy to help them pay for the summer shuttle program. So that's Route 33 is the incline cog shuttle. We're giving about $118,000 to them for 2021. Route 40 is a fairly new route to PPCC's Rampart campus in the north. So we're proposing to continue operating that. That has kind of been a pilot project, which kind of was impacted by the pandemic last year. Route 37, you've seen that the last couple of months. That was one of our spring service change items. We're proposing to operate a brand new route starting in the middle of June from our Hancock Academy Superstop area to the Amazon facilities and the Colorado Springs Airport. The funds from this PPRTA budget amendment will actually transition this base level service that we're implementing in June to a full service route, meaning it will have longer span of service, operate more trips throughout the day, weekday evening and weekend service. And it will also include ADA paratransit service, which it will not when we started in June. Route 22 is a route that has been increasing in ridership over the years. Currently, it operates every 60 minutes during weekdays. We are proposing to operate it at 30-minute frequencies. And item 6, Route 22 and Route 23 do not have Sunday service, and both of these routes would benefit from full service on Sundays. And finally, the 3 summer holidays, we normally operate a Sunday service on those days, which is not as good of a span of service, and frequencies are reduced. And frankly, the majority of our customers are service workers, retail workers, and there are a lot of businesses that are still open on those 3 holidays, and providing better service on those 3 holidays makes a lot of sense. So we're proposing to operate a normal weekday service on those 3 summer holidays. Be glad to answer any questions.
Yes, Brian, could I ask 2 things? Number 1, that $135,000 to PPACG, does that, you said it was HST, does that high-speed transit?
No, recently we have transitioned the human service provider program that we used to have called our One Ride service to PPACG. So PPACG is now the administrator of that, and they could benefit to help fund their staff and further administrate this program with that $135,000.
Okay, then back. Thank you, because I was thinking it might be the railroad.
I guess it was, Brian, would I be correct? Some people just referred to that as a central dispatch of all the HSP providers. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, basically it was what we were doing initially, but all of those programs and activities have been transferred to PPACG, since PPACG already has their area agency on aging services providing trips. Makes a lot of sense for this to be under one umbrella.
Okay, can I ask about Route 11? When you explained it was expansion or growth along the South Nevada corridor, the World Arena, is that going to change significantly? Supposedly by mid-July, we're supposed to have all of our vaccinations up to such and such a percent. I know that you had some significant requirements that I'm not even sure whether it's FEMA there or just in the Pueblo area, but they're doing a lot of vaccinations at the World Arena. Has that impacted your bus routes being congested?
No, we've been suffering from on-time performance issues on this route on the weekends for some time, even actually before COVID. So, you know, the activities at the World Arena and as a vaccination site, you know, hasn't really had any bearing. It is just a lot of congestion and a lot of people out on the weekends in that corridor that's been keeping our route from operating on time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the city of Colorado Springs is up next, but it doesn't look like there's anything on the screen. So I think we're having technical difficulties with this.
Reb, stop doing anything.
I haven't touched any. Yeah.
All right, Bev, if you could stop controls real quick, I'm gonna refresh our packet and see if I can get it to come back up. But it's being glitchy.
I didn't touch it.
It was Reb. Let me see here.
It's nice to have me here to blame everybody.
I think Gail's gonna cover the city's budget as soon as we get that back up.
I will, Bev, and if there's still a problem, I actually have it up on my screen. I could share and it's showing up correctly, but we'll see if Jessica can get it going first on her end.
Make sure your screen is steady. You look blurry right now, and it's not my glasses.
Tell you what, let me change the angle of the screen. Is that any better?
I don't know. Is it me? I'm serious. You look very blurry.
No, I
Looks
think
good
it
to me.
is PPACG internet today because it was just freaking out. It tried to kick me out of Zoom completely. So give me 2 seconds and we'll get everyone squared back away here. Gail, you can go ahead and share your screen. That should work just fine. Let me make sure.
Great.
There you go.
All right. If someone can please let me know when they can see that.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So as most of you are aware, my name is Gail Sturdivant. I'm the City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director. I am pleased today to be able to present the city's proposed Amendment 1 to the PPRTA budget. This first table that you see on your screen consists of those two components that Bev just discussed and how they break out for the city. So for the 2020 revenue carryover, for capital projects and programs, it's roughly 7.3 million. The maintenance programs are almost 4.65 million, and the transit net fare revenue is 1.4 million. And then additional with the budget revenue, that 11 million that Bev mentioned, how it gets allocated down for the city's portion of capital projects and programs is roughly another 3.8 million. The maintenance programs is another 2.4 million, and then transit is just under $1 million. So to reformat those to show you, this is what we had to deal with, or what we were looking to allocate with our budget. So those two pieces together for the capital projects and programs, it's $11,122,262. Maintenance program, $7,077,666. And transit program, again, net fare revenue was the $2,352,675 that Brian just talked with you about in a lot of detail. So what I'm going to focus primarily on the capital projects, and I put the bullet points that go along with the table. Really the 6 main line items where they come into place. So with that $11.1-ish million, We put some additional funding in the Black Forest Road construction line item. This is the initial budget adjustment as we reconcile the joint projects for the anticipated construction splits between the city and county when we look at this project and the others that were joint activities. The previous project costs have only identified the city's portion. So the add for this line item would be $4,492,666. Centennial Boulevard extension.
Gail, if I may, for some of the newer members or folks, the county's portion, by you covering the county's portion, this is your payback for the West Colorado Avenue project. Is that correctly stated?
Yes, this is the beginning of that reconciliation. So as you recall, there are 4 joint projects. The 2 larger construction ones are West Colorado Avenue and then Black Forest. And they both, and when you look at the splits, in one case, the city would owe the county roughly $7.9 million. And what we're anticipated the county owing the city on Black Forest Road is roughly that $7.98 million as well. We also have Tut Avenue, and then we have the Stapleton corridor study as well. So this is really the first step in that jigsaw puzzle to reconcile in. We're still all trying to get the A-list projects done.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll continue on. Please stop me if I get other questions. The Centennial Boulevard extension, as we mentioned previously that we were going to, last month, that we were going to need to add some additional funds when we went through the budget amendment. And at this time, we're moving $3,078,861 in to cover that total project cost that's going to be needed at this point. Just kind of a side note, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about it later. We are anticipating some of those funds to be reimbursed back to PPRTA for Colorado Springs Utilities work that's going to happen in conjunction with that project. The third item is the Las Vegas Street Royer Union Pacific Railroad crossing relocation. As that project getting to construction has been delayed, there's concern we're going to realize some additional escalation of that project. So we moved some funding in there. That cost, we're proposing $759,124. The next line item is the Tut Boulevard extension. This is a joint project as well, but we're looking to need approximately $1,791,611 of additional funds. And why this project is going up, as you recall, this project's had to be broken up into 2 phases. Phase 1 was done. We're looking to move forward with that last phase of that extension for that project and feel like that's additional money we're going to be needing to realize that. The next item is in the transit capital program. So this is, although the table was shown on Brian's memo, it's really covered under capital projects. And if you go and look under the transit programs, they currently have 4 line items. They had initial budgets for all 4 of those line items in 2021 already. They're consolidating those all into the fixed route bus vehicle replacement line item for the purpose of serving as matching funds for grants that are covering new buses that are going to be coming into the system. And the last line item is and I'm going to consolidate these 2 together because the reasoning behind the 2 are the same, are in the program funds. The city is proposing to add $250,000 to the intersection improvement program and $750,000 into the roadway safety, traffic operation, and maintenance programs. The purpose of these additional funds is to assist with advancing the Mark Shuffle road design that runs from North Carefree to Dublin Boulevard to relieve a variety of safety, congestion, operation, and capacity issues. The $1 million between those 2 programs would be combined with some other outside funding sources, and if there's any lingering RTA 1 money, which we feel like there's going to be some as the city wraps up the Mark Shuffle Bridge over Sand Creek, and potentially other monies as if the county is able to, when they close out their last 2 RTA 1 monies, to really advance that design and to put it in a position where it can be shovel ready with potentially a future PPRTA 3 authorization. I do have a lot of statistics on the safety and congestion and issues that we are addressing in that, if there's additional questions on that particular item. Hearing none, and we can circle back if we need to, if there's other questions. I'm going to slide through the tables that show what I just discussed. I hit the last two areas. Or, I'm sorry, one other thing I will pause to mention for PPRTA 1 authorization, we are not proposing any budget changes here, as anything we've discussed for the budget amendment is really more directly related to what's in the PPRTA authorization from 2015 2024. But you can see the remaining carryover money that will be reflected in the budget. Moving on to the maintenance funds, as I previously mentioned, the additional funding is $77,666, bringing the total 2021 budget to $32,937,271. That money, like all the other maintenance money, is going to continue to advance citywide maintenance needs to include bridge maintenance, signing and signal maintenance, other roadway maintenance associated with overlay, ADA, and structures that we have within the right-of-way that have the potential of jeopardizing the traveling public. And last but not least, we've got a high-level summary of the overall reflection of the transit budget, and then what Brian presented earlier provides more granularity to this should you have questions. So with that, the City of Colorado Springs would be happy to answer questions and ultimately at the end request a recommendation to the board for approval of this budget.
Red, did you have
Yeah, I've got a question. I saw Aaron was online. Aaron Egbert, are you there? The question was about West Colorado.
Well, I may be able to answer it, Reb, if you've got a question. I think Aaron's there, but I still may be able to answer that for you.
Here's the question. Basically, that road has been, the bridges over the railroad and the creek have been being worked on since the 1st of January. I'm just approximating, okay? But I do travel frequently, and it's closed one lane or both lanes. And for the last couple of weeks, it's been closed one lane each direction. Mm-hmm. Is that project or is it a capital project, and how long is it going to take? I just never anticipated it.
So that is an ongoing bridge maintenance project. It's funny, we actually had this exact same question at the CAC yesterday. So there's a lot of processes that are going through, I'm sorry, with the CTAG yesterday, a lot of processes going on for the repair of that deck. It needed some significant work. As they go through and do their work, that they are actually having to wait for these next phases to kick off to finish that. As far as the anticipated deadline or completion date, that I don't have. Aaron, I don't know if you're available to answer that part of Reb's question.
Bill, this is Tom. I have a question. With your original 21 budget of 12 million, you're now looking at 48 million for maintenance. Is it reasonable to think you can actually accomplish that much work in 1 year?
Well, as you are aware, Tom, look, let me back up 1 second. So Reb, to answer your question, I will get back with Aaron and find out when that Colorado Bridge maintenance work is going to be done. And then Tom, to move on to your question. So that roughly 7.1 million, to add that into what they already had planned is going to be a stretch to get all that spent in 2021. That did give us the ability to add $1 million and basically max out with what we're allowed to do with our current repaving contractors. And we're able to use some of that money to add more bridge maintenance. And Aaron does have more bridge maintenance lined up. And you're going to see that spend happen in 21, but really spilling into 22 as well. And it actually gives us an opportunity to address a couple issues we have with these structures in the right-of-way that I mentioned. So those are walls that we have that are either supporting the roadway or adjacent to the roadway. There are in areas where if they were to collapse, could be a huge hazard to the traveling public. So it's going to be a stretch, but that's where it's planned, or this is where it's allocated. And we'll do our best to spend it in 21, but you will see some bleeding over into
My concern gets into the availability of raw materials and labor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity pushing in this direction right now, including potentially from the state and the federal government.
You're absolutely right. And we're seeing that as you look at the construction industry components as a commodity, it's definitely an area of great concern.
Gail, can I interpret from that? This is Rev. From what you just said, and literally I'm hearing that Colorado Springs is the fastest growing city in the country. And it's creating a sure problem both for employment, and when I say employment, you can't afford the housing. You don't want to come here because it's too expensive too. And it's true not only of the service people like bartender, chef, waiters, but it also is extending into the teaching profession. And it's just in the last couple of days that I'm hearing more and more about it. Is that going to provide a problem with our budget and our quote foresight looking forward? And I know I'm more associated with the contracting and the material end of it than most, I'm sure. My dog answering the other. Shut up, Penny.
Okay, so Reb, in short, we have the exact same concerns about pricing. You know, when we talked about, I think I already gave you, well, I did already give you guys a presentation on the PPRTA 3 revenue projections a few months ago. And we knew we were in a lull. We know we've been in a lull for the past year, but with Colorado having a huge drive in job markets and all the stimulus money coming through, it's just really shifting supply and demand. So it's the sources of money plus the growth that we're anticipating that are really going to contribute to maybe even higher than we would expect across the country inflation on construction prices. So we're monitoring that very closely. And I think I've talked with you all before about how I look at commodity prices in the construction industry. We've talked specifically about concrete, about asphalt, and really it's not just the asphalt and the aggregate, but really the oil products that go in asphalt and in maintenance repair. So I've got grave concern about those and how they're going to impact our projects. I will mention the information we just got this past week, you know, where the construction industry is seeing the biggest gain in commodity price right now is in the lumber industry. And it was first the production was down, but now the demand is just skyrocketing. And you can't, if you were to build a new home today, 2 to 3 months ago, I should say, you could lock in a price for the construction of a new home if you were to go to buy one. Today, you cannot. The builders will not guarantee the prices on those homes. You could be subject to a change order. And we're hearing that, at least in Colorado Springs, you know, for a single family resident, moderate size, you know, that's a $30,000 cost increase. Those are the kind of things that we're looking at, and we're doing our best to put contingencies in our projects. And we look at planning, but we're doing our best to anticipate that cost, but there's not a lot else we can do other than put as many contingencies and taking the best industry practices to plan for those.
Gail, this is Larry. Just want to make a comment on your bullet item number 7 under your capital projects. Really want to encourage you to advance that design on Mark Sheffel Road, as you indicate. I drive that section of road quite often, and boy, it's really becoming congested. And since there's several concrete plants and there's the truss plant, they have all those vehicles going north there, and you go from 2 lanes or the 4 lanes on the south down to 2 lanes, and it gets really congested through that area. So I encourage you to get that design advanced and completed so that project could go as soon as possible.
Yes, Larry, that's exactly what we're positioning ourselves to do. Thank you for your support on that.
Hey, Gail,
Yes.
this is Ryan Bissiger.
Yes, Ryan.
Yes, Gail. I also, like Larry, want to comment on that last bullet on Mark Scheffel and think that the city's approach is very prudent to advance the design on that to position, like you mentioned, for RTA 3. And it really sets up for, and I would encourage other agencies to do the same as we approach RTA 3 to position those projects as early as you can. That are going to be, A-list projects to get them implemented in the ground as soon as that measure is passed. So yeah, the city, great job there.
Great, thank you. And I want to give credit to El Paso County on this project as well. Right now, that right-of-way section is split between the city and the county. The city is looking on taking over that right-of-way, and some of the funds we're going to be using to advance this design to be ready are going to be coming from the county. So I want to thank them. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, Jim.
On Tut Boulevard, recent article in the paper, American Furniture Warehouses announced they're building another warehouse and showroom over there, and the warehouse is going to be twice the size of the one on Fillmore and I-25. My question to you, Tut Boulevard is the first roundabout as you go north from Dublin. And then there's another roundabout up just south of Woodman. Has the increased heavy truck traffic been taken into account in that area to accommodate that additional truck? I know CNC Sand has a place there, but I see a lot of their trucks going back out Templeton Gap to Black Forest and up that way. But I'm just concerned with American Furniture Warehouse with their stated goal of increasing furniture in that warehouse versus having to have it delivered from Denver, and whether or not the planning for that heavy truck traffic around those traffic circles and whatnot has been taken into account. I know that's a new announcement, but to me, I see that as a risk to the current design and additional wear and tear that may not have been anticipated when that area was constructed.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern, Jim. A lot of times when we look at pavement designs, we do know, or we do take into account what we're anticipated to be the vehicle loading. And if it's going to have heavier truck traffic, obviously we would put that into the pavement design consideration. In this particular case, I think most of it's going to be somewhat reactive on the existing pieces of TUT. And then where we can on this last stretch, this newer piece of TUT, obviously any extra vehicle loading that wasn't anticipated, that we would pick it up in this new piece. I don't know that I could tell you today exactly what that pavement design was designed for at the time. If you're interested, I could see if somebody could dig that up. But
no, just that you're aware of it and are thinking, and someone's thinking about it, because that's a relatively new new decision.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions for the city on our budget amendment or proposed budget amendment?
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you. And Jessica, I don't know if you need my screen to project still, or if you want to try to take it over.
Jessica, you got it again?
Yeah, sorry, we're having server problems at PPACG. They're messing with our server, so we got booted off here a little bit. So if Bev wants to switch it back to make me host, I can share again. But
I'm going to stop sharing and then.
Sure. Sorry for the hiccups here, guys. Internet. Bev, are you there? Can you switch it back to me, please? Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot. How do I do that again? The share screen?
Sure. Yeah, so just hover over my square, the 3 dots, and click on that, and then you'll click make host.
And can I add one thing real quick, Jessica, while you're doing that? I did get an IM that the Colorado bridge work is anticipated to be done at the end of May, Rep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Say
Is that-
this again, Jessica. What do I do? I'm
Yep,
sorry.
so no problem. If you hover over my square and the
Okay.
3 little dots in the corner.
Oh, make host. Got it.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
All right, perfect. So let me share your minutes and stuff again.
Everybody get their shot so we can go back to in person.
Yes, please.
I went to the bar and they wouldn't serve me.
Can everyone see that? Okay.
Oh, that's great. So go down to where El Paso County Department of Public Works, their memo. It's in the budget.
Jessica, it's page 34 in the PDF file.
Thank you. Page 30. There you go.
Okay. And if Jennifer is available to go over this?
I am. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chair, CAC, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. I just want to let you know we're having internet problems here too. That's why I'm not turning on my video. I just want to make sure that we get through this without me having to lock up. So anyway, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for this. We have kind of several high-level items just to go over with our budget amendment. The first is looking at our 2020 maintenance budget, and we are adding about $1.8 million as far as this additional revenue to our overall budget. And so we are actually in the process of working on our contracting for many of our maintenance programs right now. So sorry. So we will be programming those into those contracts and probably using those in several different places. But as we award those contracts, we'll be bringing them forth to the CAC for your review. In regards to our capital program, we still have several projects in our 2005 to 2014 capital program. And as I alluded to about a couple months ago in our update of our of the first capital program, we were planning to do a line item transfer because we are closing out the Baptist Road project. And so we went ahead and took this opportunity with the budget amendment to do a line item transfer from the Baptist Road to the Meridian Road extension. So we are completely closing out Baptist. And then as we finish anything else, as Gail mentioned, as we close out all these projects, any remaining money will be going to the joint project that we are working on with the city of Mark Scheffel. So we really appreciate the city's cooperation and coordination on that project. And I think that we both are continuing to work together very, very well to make sure that we are able to advance those improvements as quickly as possible. And then finally, we received a total of about $4.4 million for our capital program budget for the 2015 to 2024 projects. And we are allocating approximately $800,000 to those collection of Deer Creek Base Camp Microscope Way projects up in the monument area. And then the remaining funding will be going towards Academy Boulevard in about $3.6 million. We are advancing that project, and that's one of the projects that will be getting underway late this year and early next year as far as construction. So we're making sure that we're allocating those monies to the projects that are getting underway. If you have any other questions, that wraps that up. If you have any other questions about our budget amendment, be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions for Jennifer? We'll move on to Manitou. Okay.
I believe that Manitou is down on page 37. It starts. There you go. All right. So is somebody here from Manitou to talk about this, or
Yes.
I can go?
Yes, Beverly, I'm happy to do it.
Thanks, Joel.
I'm Doel Grebenik. I'm the city engineer from Manitou Springs, and Jeff Jones asked if I could fill in for him today, so I'll do my best.
Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Basically, this is just us acknowledging some of the additional revenue that came our way and where that money will be placed. So I don't know if there's any specific questions. We actually met yesterday as a city to try to lay out our plans for the rest of the year on how to allocate and obligate these funds.
Green Mountain Falls will take any change that you have.
Actually, they're above us, so it falls down to us. We kind of catch theirs.
Hey, Doel, just a quick update on your maintenance building. I know weren't there some PPRTA dollars for your maintenance facility? Could you give us just a quick update on that? I know that was the topic of some, I'll say, spirited discussion last summer. Is that underway? Is that wrapping up? How's that going?
We actually had Pikes Peak Regional Building out yesterday to do their final inspection. It's all remodeled. Everybody's moved in. It's nice and new, and it's really terrific for us to get to have access to that.
Fantastic, Doel. That's good news. I know, like I said, was it last summer? There was a lot of intrigue around that, and I'm glad to hear that it's successful and you're at the putting a ribbon on that thing. Good for you.
That's right. Well, the outside is the same, so a pretty ribbon doesn't quite do it justice, but the inside's all brand new. So once you're inside, it's like an oasis.
Great. And no more health issues. I know it wasn't a sick building syndrome and fumes and ventilation issues, sucking in exhaust from the outside.
That's right. When I first walked in on my first day on the job, I didn't have any carpet. I only had concrete with glue trowel marks in it because they had ripped the carpet out. So yeah, so we have come a long way and we're grateful for it.
Charming. Well, good for you. Congratulations. Thanks to everybody for supporting that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the board.
All right.
Okay, so Green Mountain Falls then. And is there anybody here from Green Mountain Falls? Okay, not seeing anybody. I know Angie was sick for a while, so they received additional maintenance revenue from 2020 unspent funds of $26,731, and then the 11 million that we allocated gave them another 3,732. So they have a total maintenance budget this year of 71,352. Now in the capital, which is in the next little section, Belvedere is finished. Oh, wait. Belvedere is finished completely. So all the extra money went to the Stilling Basins project. And I do not know where they are at beginning a project in that category. Okay, so the town of Rama. I don't know if Cindy's here today.
She wasn't there.
I don't think so. Okay, so their capital project was finished and it was done by El Paso County. So then their capital allocation goes to El Paso County as payback for El Paso County forwarding money to them in the beginning. So then they just have the maintenance allocations, and that's in the first paragraph. So they have a total budget of 33,624 and thousand. So that's that for Rama. Then the admin budget, we just allocated the additional 110 to under number 2, engineering estimates for future capital projects. It's in the 310. And then we have carryover from prior years. There's a little note at the bottom of almost $498,000 that's also going to be in that category, or is in that category, but that's in that carryover figure. So any questions there? Okay, let's go to the next page. So this is the reserve allocation. And so our reserve is 10%, and the estimated Tabor reserve is 3%. And then the non-board designated reserve is the 7%. So right now we have 11,633,000 in the reserve account. And that is the entire budget. Are there any general questions? Okay, so if somebody would do a motion and second and so on, I'd really appreciate it.
This is Dave Zelenak. I'll forward a motion to approve.
Second, this is Rev.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amended budget as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you all for your time and thank the staffs for their presentations. I appreciate that level of detail.
Thank you.
All right, so the modified meeting agenda, we go to PPRTA 3 matrix. Let me just, I'd be real surprised if we get through this today. So at some point, in the interest of everyone's time and the fact that we don't have to do it all today, if we get into long discussions and whatnot, I may choose to limit discussions so that we can get through the rest of the agenda and the other people that are waiting to present their parts of the agenda. I'd like to also thank the city and county staffs for taking this on. This was the board of directors sent this back to the member staffs back in November. And I know that as many of you know, I'm very sensitive to the additional workload that we as a CAC place on the city staffs. But we were kind of bogged down in terms of the decisions on putting together PPRTA 3 list and whatnot really falls on the member government. And so I just like to go up front and thank Gail and your staff and the folks in the city, Jennifer, the same to you and your staffs for putting this together. I know this was not easy to address all these concerns, but I must also say the CAC didn't generate a lot of these questions. So, but thank you all for that time. So let's start with item number 1, program funds. We had 4 recommendations, A, B, C, and D. So who wants to, the staff recommendations, and so how do we want to proceed here? Some Gail, Jennifer, somebody on the staff want to start off?
Gail Sturtevant, and I'm here to run through the recommendations, if that works best for you.
Okay.
So I hit the top button. It was really related to program funds, and that was broken into 4 questions, whether or not we should leave each entity to make their own request for programs funds. If we do, how they give priority to the named projects and what's the process for that. Should we consider a regional grant match program fund? And should we consider a regional, federal, or state companion project fund? The staff's recommendation, and this is probably the most important of all the ones we're going to talk about today, because you'll see in subsequent items, we refer back to this. We had a lot of discussion both between the city and county staff, back and forth with PPRTA, and Rick, I know, spoke with council, and then we went and got concurrence from the other member governments to present this to you. So our first recommendation is to leave the opportunity for each entity to request an A-list program fund, And similar to A-list projects, the entities needed to present an initial budget for the program funds of the CACM board, and that these programs would be allocated annually through the budget cycle. And changes to these budgets would need to be requested and justified by those member governments. That's the first part. And I'll go through all these, and then I think it may be best to answer questions as part of the whole body. The second part is that capital programs should be included in the ballot in alphabetical order with the projects. And just as a reminder for those who aren't aware, that's exactly how it was done with the last PPRTA authorization. By default, capital programs and projects are prioritized through the annual budget process. Entities requesting capital program funds must demonstrate in their CIP that they have the ability to complete their A-list projects in addition to their programs. And when I say that, even though each entity has their own CIP, you know, we collectively as a region need to be looking to make sure we can achieve that A-list program or A-list set of projects, I should say. Jessica, if you could scroll up to the top of C, please. Thank you. So this is one big item that we really proposed for consideration, and it was to include, and the terminology on this is very important, it's state or federal discretionary grant match fund program on the A-list. This program would be available for all member governments that could use for local matching funds for projects. We could consider either a nominal or no initial budgeted funds for this, and the board can approve the budget or budget amendment to provide matching funds. We would recommend that PPRTA establish a policy for obtaining this state and federal discretionary match fund program when you apply for applications. So this is important, and I'll pick on a current, or I'll pick on one that we as the city recently applied for, the INFA grant, the federal discretionary grant fund. Because it was an A-list project, we already had budgeted money, but this could be available for B-list or non-listed projects potentially, that a member government could come ask for permission for a budget amendment underneath this program to provide local matching funds. And I can hit more on those examples later, but I just want to make sure that you would want a policy in place for that. And if it was, if those funds were budgeted, then that new project could be a child project underneath that grant match program fund. Therefore, it gets incorporated to the A-list that way. The state or federal discretionary grant match fund program could be used to fulfill that local match requirements. And right now, the state of Colorado doesn't have discretionary grants, but it looks like there's an potential opportunity under new transportation legislation that could be a possibility in the future. And there are existing federal grant that are discretionary. Infra, as I mentioned, RAISE is there now. That replaced what was formerly referred to as the BUILD grant, and the CRISI grant, which I don't know if you're familiar with, that was more rail related, are future grant opportunities that result from federally declared disasters. And we thought that was important, and not to pick on our friends at Green Mountain Falls, but this is an example that we use with a smaller member government. They may have, let's say there's a flood that does some major infrastructure damage, and federal grant funding could be available under FEMA. It still requires that local government to come up with a local match. So this would give them an opportunity to come and approach the PPRTA CACM board and request assistance for that local match piece. It is important that this program would not be allowed to be used for local match for revenue allocations that come directly to PPACG. And so as federal level gas tax money comes down and gets allocated to the states, and the state through formula funds allocate it down to PPACG. We compete with the other member governments in PPACG for that funding, but that is a direct allocation distribution and then a competition for projects into that. This local match fund would not be eligible to meet that. And the reality is that would not be fair for our other member governments if we were, or other member governments here and then also within the region, because for example, the city or the county could come up with projects where we could come up with match funds and then ask for additional match funds and really use up that bucket. So we really want to leave that alone. And then moving on to the next section, that if the proposed grant project is not on the A list, yeah, let me hit this last paragraph and then we'll move it. Thanks, Jessica. If the proposed grant project is not on the A list, but is included on the B list, we would recommend just a majority vote of the PPRTA board for these matching funds. If the proposed grant project is not on either the A list or a B list, we would recommend the supermajority vote, and we would leave that to the discretion. The CAC board, whether it's 2/3 or 3/3 of the full board membership, would be necessary to approve those funds. So Jessica, if you could move up now to the top of the next page. So kind of finishing that point, when the state or federal discretion and grant match fund program is included on the A list on the ballot, language may need to be added that eligibility for this program will be set in either the establishing IGA or board resolution to provide transparency to the electorate. So if we were to move forward to this is something that you and the board would want to work with Jennifer Ivey to make sure that what we put in place to go along with this program was going to be transparent to our citizens. And last but not least, in this topic area, a separate CDOT companion project program is not recommended. However, there are opportunities for member governments to use other programs if available and relevant, because remember those programs need to be defined for certain uses, to partner with CDOT or other entities to incorporate betterments deemed appropriate for the jurisdiction with a project led by CDOT or another entity. So that was a lot of talking, and hopefully some background that helped provide some clarity, but I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions, but this is an area there's been lots of thought and input on, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Jim, this is Tom.
If I may, Tom, just 1 second. Gail, is this what you presented and you went over? Is it fair to say that you and Jennifer or the city and the county have collaborated on this response?
Yes, the city and the county and have collaborated on this. We've worked with Rick, and he's got some legal advice from Jennifer Ivey just to provide some input for our recommendation. And then we also went to Green Mountain Falls, Manitou, and Rama to get their concurrence to present this to you today as our collective recommendation to staff.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Going back to staff recommendations, paragraph A, we're talking about requesting A-list program funds for everybody. It sounds like you're generating a list, and historically the program funds have been sort of that catch-all loosely defined thing that says it sort of fits into this area and we didn't know it was coming. If you start generating lists, then they're not unknowns anymore, they're knowns, and they're either capital or they're maintenance, and they should then not fit into the category of program funds.
I think I agree with what you said there, Tom. I don't know if there was a specific question or clarification that I.
Well, it's sort of, it's inferring the establishment of a list of items to fall into the program funds, when in fact that's contrary to what the program funds were set up for.
Yeah, and maybe that I need to provide a clarification. It is, the program fund would work very much similar to then today, that they're a flexible discretionary fund that have specific assigned levels of areas where they can be used. And I'll pick on intersection safety improvements, for example, that those are intended to be spot improvements to improve the safety and operation of that intersection. That happens to be the guardrails or the definition of what that program fund is for. Things are going to come up over time that can be used for. The projects we're talking about are the traditional A-list capital projects that we can see as a capital need today. What you would have when you go to the ballot is a list of the projects that you have. So if you go and look at the 2012 ballot, you could see the Centennial Boulevard extension as a project. Later on down the list, you're going to see the Emergency Bridge Fund program. That would be very similar to that, and not trying to roll capitally or define capital projects into one of those program areas.
Is it safe to say that even though it's a discretionary fund, much like you have now, there is a list of things that would fall under that category that given, not given an emergency, that you would allocate budgeted funds to intersection improvements and not just leave this whole thing as an emergency fund. You have list of things you want to try to get to now, if I'm not mistaken.
If I understand you correctly, Jim, the answer is yes. I mean, our intent would be anything that's a defined capital project. Then yes, we would put that on the list. And then these would be things that are going to come up primarily over time. And I mentioned that intersection project, or I'm sorry, the intersection program. That's a perfect example of a program that we identify safety and operational needs at intersections all the time. And we can use it to go and put some kind of change in the place to improve that operation and safety. But sometimes we even use that money to go to the state, and they have, which is safety highway improvement funds. And so in fact, the city was just successful in getting a $2.5 million grant, of which the city is going to be contributing about between 250 and 400,000 out of that program fund to match that money together to improve one of the intersections within the city. But both of those cases are included in what's defined as an acceptable purpose for use under that program fund. And then we still have to come back and bring a contract both to the CAC and to the board to make sure that we're appropriately using those funds.
So in general, it's pretty much like you're using it right now.
For the city would, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Just right now, today, the city is the only entity that has them. We would just recommend, if there's a desire that the county or the other entities would consider them in the future, but we would anticipate them working very much the same way for them as well.
Okay. Richard, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. I guess first of all, let me compliment you and Jennifer and anyone else involved, not just here, but in the entire document. One hell of a lot of work, one heck of a lot of good recommendations in various parts. Some things I disagree with, and I want to speak to one of those, but I do admire excellence in writing, and you all you've really done a good job on that. Now, my biggest problem is right here in this program. I have run the gamut in my profession from a state highway department responsible for the roads and highways in 98 of its 100 counties, and except independent cities. And on to regional and national places. I do not like the idea of program funds. I never have since I came into this organization. I've raised it here and there with various individuals. It seems to me, the only example I can use, and no disrespect meant to the city, but the city's been the only one really that has had such a thing. And I've looked at the projects. Most of these projects seems to be, excuse me, most of these projects are minor things. I find sidewalk repair. I find some sort of a traffic signals and things. And I'm a traffic engineer. I know the importance of that. And then there's the bicycle lanes, and there are trails. And I know that all of these can be done under the law. Our good friend and leader has told us that we could even have gondolas. That doesn't mean we should do it. Now, the main I guess, objection to the program funds and looking at the way they have been used is that it's sort of like a it's not quite a slush fund, but it's a bag of funds that if you can't get it approved in your jurisdiction, then it's a good way to go. You go elsewhere. These expenditures that I have seen in the last 3 years, roughly 3 years I've been on the Citizens Committee here, there are things that there are budgets for in the jurisdiction. And if there aren't, then maybe it shouldn't be done. But I say they probably are. And one is either is coming up with something new that's not covered or they can't get. And it really should not be done by a regional organization dedicated to the primarily building and maintenance of highways, roads, streets, and bridges. And that is where I personally want to see the money going. These other things are generally, they're not that expensive. I think there was one very big, large bridge that probably about $18 million was spent on, but that was a very special project. I'm not sure that I would have enjoyed voting for that, but so I'd like to know why, as far as the type of expenditures that have been made, why in the world should we have a program fund here as well to cover these odds and ends? Now, that basically you have raised under the descriptions, you've talked about like a state or federal discretionary grant match, excuse me, and that's a different category. And there's things in there that are very well written and they're good ideas. And it seems to me that we should have something like that even without a program fund. It just seems to me there ought to be some way to do it. I'd rather see the ability written in that you can do it for some of these new ideas, which I like. So again, I compliment you all, but the program fund is, to me, not a good idea. And I have, and Jennifer knows, she's heard me briefly, that I'm really delighted the county doesn't have such a program. But if I were a staff person working in the county or the city, I might well think this is a great idea for various reasons. But as if I was a member of the Board of County Commissioners, I'm not sure I would be so pleased with it. So that's my point. I will, if we get up to a vote on this, I will have to vote no. I am not in favor of program funds, even though I have a feeling that the governing body of PPRTA, our elected representatives, probably will like the idea and will go ahead and they may well vote to do this. And if they do, you've got a number of good new ideas in here that can be done with it. And then I would hope we would give up on repair of sidewalks and these other minor things. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Was this, who's this, Ryan?
No.
who
Jim,
was
I
that?
think this is Ryan. It was somebody else. I think it was Tony.
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Tony, hey, can you hold on just one moment?
You bet.
Ryan had his hand up and I did not see yours. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I don't even see where I can raise my hands.
Okay, so I acknowledge Ryan first, so let me ask Ryan to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I just have a comment here on A and C. So I really like A and the program fund idea because it provides the member agencies their flexibility in order to deliver projects that aren't foreseen, 10 plus years out when we create these lists. And just to kind of dovetail into the example that Gail provided of the Highway Safety Improvement Program, today, as an agency is looking at their projects and an intersection, you could say, well, there's no need there today. But as conditions change over the life of the 10 year of the program, there could be increased accidents at a location, and being able to address those needs in the future and provide the member agencies that flexibility, I think is really important, because there, as things are right now, it's not going to be static as we move forward in the next 10 years. And then the next one I want to comment on is C, and this is actually my specialty in my day job. And I was really happy to see that there is this program being developed, or idea, for state and federal discretionary grant match, because as a region, we may have an A-list project that is great for us, but it's not necessarily great for a federal discretionary or even a state discretionary grant program, because each administration has their own priorities. And so I think it's really smart for the region to have this program to be able to advance projects that could meet the need, meet the goals of the different discretionary grant programs, and bring in more federal dollars, more outside funds to the region, and being really able to leverage the RTA funds to do that. So, Gail did mention the infra and raise, but she is absolutely correct when it comes to some of the smaller agencies. And if there is a disaster, and being able to leverage, be able to match FEMA and FHWA, federal highways programs for disaster assistance, that's a big deal. And being able to have those funds at the ready should something happen, whether it is a flood or it's a fire. I think that's important for all the agencies to have that that grant match program at the ready for them. And so those are the comments I wanted to share. So thank you, Jim.
Okay, let me make I guess it's kind of got to have some guidelines here. So Richard made his point, or his state, and completed his thought on program funds and yay or nay on program funds. Ryan is now drilling down a little bit more on some of the newer funds, grant match kind of funds. So rather than jump to a different whole subject altogether, is there anybody else that would like to comment on Ryan's comments about grant match funds and establishing program funds for those particular pots?
Mr. Chair, I was going to comment on program funds.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Tony.
I agree with Ryan that I believe it's a very good idea to have the program funds for the exact same reasons. The 10-year program that we do with PPRTA makes it so that it's almost impossible to foresee what's going to happen. Now, obviously, we have all the projects that we know need to be done, and that's why we have that list. But we've seen over the past few years that things come up, we end up having roads just get sinkholes underneath them, and hey, we need to get some money to do that. We need to move some money around. And the program funds have given us an opportunity to be able to do a little bit of that kind of work. I appreciate the comments that were made, but I do not believe that they have been used as a slush fund. I know not everyone would agree with me on that, but I do believe that it has been properly used and is a proper use of money for PPRTA.
Okay, thank you. Jean Bray.
Well, Richard espoused a lot of the comments that I'll make, so I won't reiterate his. I see both sides of the coin on this, but the bottom line is that over the last several years, it seems like we are moving more and more towards the only money that the city is going to spend on projects is what comes out of PPRTA. And that PPRTA money was never intended to replace their entire capital budget with regard to capital projects for streets in the city. It was to supplement it. And the more we add things into the PPRTA extensions, such as program funds, the more we facilitate the ability and disregard their ability to transfer funds internally in order to take care of some of these things that are short-term and weren't planned. The beauty of the first PPRTA was its simplicity and that it was straightforward, and the public had no issue with understanding what it did and how it did it and what the outcome would be. And we're moving to a place now where more and more of the public is going to view this as too complicated, too complex, typical government bureaucracy. I don't understand where my money's going, and what I thought it was going for it's turning out to go someplace else. And I think that's a detriment. So that's shortened to the point and specific to the project program funds. But it extends into the capital and the other, because that's also a place where the participants in the RTA have the ability to use money that's outside of this to do the match. So that's my comment, and I'm done for now.
Thank you. Jim Moore, you had your hand up.
Yeah, first of all, it's interesting. I begin by endorsing both what Jean and Richard have had to say about the program funds themselves as they are likely to be perceived by the voting public. My coming on to this committee was predicated in no small part by the fact that PPRTA has stood as a sort of hallmark in how to get public support for an extended government program. And you do it by being very specific in what things are going to be for. However, the one thing that comes up in this particular area that I had not seen before, and this is where I side with Ryan, is I think the idea of setting aside some amount of funds in the overall budget to be used when there are opportunities being set by the dynamics of the state funding or federal infrastructure funding that we could take advantage of with matching, to me, might be something worth giving much more serious consideration to. But we need to proceed very cautiously, in my view, with regard to the question of program funds that are sort of squishy in how they might be perceived by the public.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Dave Zelenak.
Thank you, and to Gail and Jennifer and everybody. Great work again. I mean, this is off the charts, superbly done. Thank you for bringing this forward to us. Like what's been said before, I think I'll also just like to briefly chime in. I absolutely support program funds. I absolutely support flexibility. I think that the citizens, I'll go way back, pre-PPACG, PPRTA, I was at the very front end, as many of you may recall, helping position this entire program. I can tell you the concern by the citizens was then, and I think to a large extent still is today, kind of a watchdog, a little bit of suspicion on this. So I would like to suggest that we move in this direction. And if possible, maybe this is for Gail or Jennifer or whomever to help figure out what kind of sideboards, what kind of controls can we put in place? I don't want to design that now. I don't want to spend our valuable time debating that, but I would like to see some very strict rules in place to where it does not become exactly as been said here. This is not a slush fund. This is not something that's just to augment operational funds or would be perceived that way. No, doggone it. This is great opportunities. It's time sensitive. You can't anticipate this, but there needs to be some strict, at least a perception of sideboards or controls over how these funds are spent. So that's just my 2 cents. If that can be designed, figured out, and maybe brought back to us as this thing develops, hey, I'm all for the concept, and I will certainly vote for and support the idea with whatever the group thinks is the regulatory guidelines in place to ensure that it's not a slush fund or never gets the perception of one. These are strictly controlled, very maybe even audited dollars that are flexibly in the hands of the government agencies. So there.
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to share my 2 cents worth as well. I am for program funds, but I am for controls and guardrails, as several of you have talked about on program funds. I think that when we're looking at the fact that we are trying to anticipate our needs 15 years, 13 years in advance, it's impossible to know what's coming down the road and decisions being made. Flooding, as someone mentioned on a previous discussion, you have a major flood and you take out part of an intersection and it's 1970s or 80s or 90s technology at that intersection. When you're rebuilding it, it makes sense to upgrade the intersection and all the stuff and bring it into current technology and stuff. And so that's not an anticipated A-list project. So I think program funds are provide the flexibility, but I do think that we need to monitor them. I think the city, and not picking on the city, but it's the only one that has one, has begun to share with us, and this committee has had concerns that they were in fact just slush funds. But recently the city has come forward and says, no, we've budgeted this amount of money and here are the things, barring some emergency, these are the things that we anticipate doing with this budgeted money in this chosen category of program funds. So I'm one for program funds. However, I have some concerns about shifting towards a large pot of money designated for grant match and those kinds of general funds that we talk about in C and D or C, paragraph C. An example is the gap of why that's a good thing to do. When the decision was made and the need was presented, we had to go back to the public to get approval to add the gap as an A-list project. And that cost several $100,000 in voter cost and other kinds of things that could probably have been better spent. If we had a grant match pot that is, I would advocate for zero funded, but listed as an A-list project as a grant match, zero funded, then that would save us having to go back to the public when an opportunity presents itself, such as a FEMA grant or one of those kinds of things. My concern is the more of these pots we create, and the avenues that we open up, we're going to respond to a FEMA disaster with PPRTA money. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's what city and municipalities, municipal funds are for, and their general budgets are for. And when we start responding to every emergency or something with PPRTA money, we're taking away from our goal of accomplishing those A and B list projects. And so those opportunities to use grant matching and other kind of things should be limited. They should be controlled and should not be a carte blanche just because I've got a part of money there. The examples of Academy Boulevard South and stuff, the county and Jennifer and them were able to actually reduce RTA's spending by being able to jump on to those programs and take advantage of contracting mechanisms and quantity of materials and those kind of things, which in turn lowers contract costs. When we have those opportunities to do that, and there's a fee or a charge to do that, having that money, I think, in some of that categorizes it, isolates it, and gives us that opportunity to do that. But I'm very cautious that we begin to focus away from A-list projects, focusing on all this grant match stuff, and take away from our goal of doing what the public asked us to do in looking at those A-list stuff. So that's my 2 cents worth. Anybody else have any questions on item 1, program funds?
Just a question to you, Jim. This is
Go ahead.
Ed.
Go ahead, Ed.
So you're in favor of all the program funds, but omit item C, if I'm understanding you correctly?
I'm not saying necessarily, Ed, thanks for the question. I'm not necessarily saying eliminate it, but I'm saying I would like to initially see some very tight controls and boundaries and guardrails on this, so that this doesn't, and I'd like to see a starting off as a zero fund, and as an opportunity presents itself, it comes forward to the CAC and to the board, and we move money into that discretionary, into that item. That would be my desire.
Thank you.
Jim?
Go ahead, Rev.
I had my interpretation of this discussion through Richard and all the rest. I think programs, the program fund, the city being the only ones that have program funds, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying what's obvious. The ones that have been programs, they come to us and slowly we become very comfortable with how they're doing it, okay? Those are the sideboards. But with respect to, and I'm gonna pick specifically, they say state or federal discretionary funds, and Ryan mentioned them. I don't know what zero funding and what the point is. What I know about the cost of voting for the gap money, okay? But let's suppose we, and I think, well, Jennifer did apply for it, and it was a $65 million grant, okay? How would you fund that without going to the voters? And when I say that, $65 million is for the sake of the, it's about the total amount of capital money available in the first PPRTA at the very beginning. So how would we address, I guess what I'm saying, I want them to have the ability to use PPRTA money to lower the costs of PPRTA by taking, quote, your grant, whether it's federal or state or wherever the money's coming from. How do we get it?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I'll take a stab at that. I have 2 comments. The first one is, and Gail can jump in, but my assumption on the state or federal discretionary grant match fund program is that if an individual member government wanted to apply for a grant and wanted to use some of their funds, their capital funds, as a match for that grant, then that the funding, Reb, would come out of their capital share. So they'd have to do a line item transfer at any monthly meeting. And Bev, you can jump in and help me on this as well. If the city has and they currently have a $40 million annual capital allocation just out of the base budget, not counting the prior year additional revenue, but just in round numbers, if they needed a $3 million match for something, they could do a line item transfer and move $3 million out of one of their capital projects into this grant match program, and then have it available in case they received the federal match of 10 million, then they'd have their 3 million to match it. So Gail or Bev, do you want to jump in and revise that? My second comment is on the program funds. The city only had program funds in PPRTA 1. They had 4 program funds. PPRTA 2, the city increased the 4 program funds to 12. PPRTA 2, with the city's 12 program funds, passed by an 80-20 margin by the PPRTA voters.
Okay, Rick's right. So then the member government staff would be coming to the CAC and the board, asking specifically at the time that they're funding one of the matches for an approval of it. And they may be wise to come a little earlier when they're applying for the grant, because they really have to have the PPRTA's permission to state that they're using PPRTA funds as a match. They would probably need a letter or something.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. In fact, if we were to apply for a grant, we would have to have a letter stating from PPRTA that those funds would be available should we be successful for the grant. So you're absolutely right. We would be looking about with our programs on how we might transfer money or set aside money to be to basically leverage those funds to get these grants to come in. I will say, kind of just a side note to think about, I would say in most cases, if not all, the projects we're going to be approaching permission on are A-list, which really is more informational, and B-list projects to get grants funding and move them up. And what we do when we look at these grant opportunities is that we can do a desktop evaluation and see where we're going to score well and really be able to demonstrate the need to bring those into our region and then use our other RTA dollars to leverage. The one thing that I would like maybe Rick or someone else to mention, because the GAP kind of got thrown in our discussion, and the GAP is not really a grant, is my understanding. It's something that was really proposed for it. And so this grant match fund would not be used or eligible for this program that we've recommended for consideration.
Gail, my point on that was it was not listed as an A-list project. And so therefore we had to go back to the public to get permission to spend money on a project that was not listed on the A-list. And so how that relates to the grants was that you have a grant match fund in order to provide our matching funds should you get a federal money or something to a project. And because it's listed as a A-list project, we don't have to go back to the public to get permission to spend RTA money on the matching portion of that grant.
Yes, absolutely correct, Jim. Thank you for that clarification.
Jim?
Go ahead.
What was the $65 million grant that Jennifer applied for? When I say that, it went to the GAP, okay, regardless of what it was called, whether it was state, federal highway discretionary funds. I think it was, it may have been a PIP or TIP grant, doesn't make any difference, but it was a grant and she got it. I don't know what means but we had nothing on it. That did not require the voters to vote on. Whatever she did physically with the money, I don't know. I don't recall. I do know that helped get it over the hump to become a reality. And since that time, the state has decided to help fund the bridge, a county line bridge, to expand it so it's going to handle the traffic. So literally there are so many different means for the various government agencies, regardless of how they're fiscally being FISCAL, whatever their fiscal situation is, they should be able to use their monies, have the ability to use their monies at discretion. I agree that they should be listed as an A-list project because that's our primary goal, is to accomplish those A-list projects first. And if you put them back on a B-list, we're not supposed to touch the money until we've completed all the A-lists. Gail, thank you again. You pointed it out earlier. But literally, they have to come to us anyway. CAC and board.
Okay, Tony, you had your hand up. Oh, no, yeah, Tony.
I already spoke. I'm good. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. It was Gene. It was Gene Bray. Sorry.
Well, a couple of comments with regard to what Rick mentioned about the transfer. Would have to come to the board to get transfer of funds into the a category in order to get the matching money. What prevents them from doing the same thing in their own budgets? Nothing is the answer. Whether the money is transferred out of a PPRTA category into a discretionary match program is no different than the city transferring the same amount of money allocated to the project out of their funds in order to cover the program match. We are moving away from the foundation of what PPRTA was, which was to provide money for specific large capital projects that exceeded the ability of the city to fund or the other entities in the PPRTA. And we're broadening it out and basically turning this into, this is their entire capital project funds. That's the perception the public will have. We need to be very careful about this because eventually the public's going to go, why am I getting taxed twice for the same thing? And my comment is right now, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I want to know how we're going to guard against the perception that suddenly, or not suddenly, but over the course of 20 or 30 years, the PPRTA becomes the funds for all the capital projects of the entities. And that's what it appears from that we're headed. And I think that's going to be the perception of people within the public that dig a little bit deeper into this. And if enough of them believe that, it's not going to pass, and where are we going to be? Going back to the very first comment I made, the genius around the first PPRTA was its simplicity. We had a very simple, straightforward, well-defined process of this is where we're going to spend the money. And we were able to show them where every penny of it went, and it was straightforward. We said we were going to do these projects. That's the ones that we did, and here's the ones that we didn't. And now we're looking at shuffling money around so that the public has no means of knowing day to day where the money's going to get spent until after the CAC, not the CAC, but after the board votes on it and says this is the changes we're going to meet. With as little public participation as there is in the CAC, we'll get some, but it's not going to be sufficient enough to sway the board. I'm open in some respects. I understand and respect Jim's view about there has to be controls, guidelines. We have to be able to restrict how it's used, but I see this headed in the direction that we're going to end up funding all the capital projects for the entities, and they don't have any stake in the game to speak of because most of the funding is coming out of the RTA. And that was never what it was intended for. And if that happens, the public's going to go, I'm paying for this twice. You get my money once for it, not 2 times. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer Irvin, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address because there's been some talk about the city versus the county and these program funds. I just want to state here that the county will be considering program funds as we put together our list. That's not something that we have finalized, but that is a discussion I will be having with my Board of County Commissioners and will be receiving direction on. So I think the point here is that if entities would like program funds, this will allow it. What I would say is that as we discuss the program fund issue and putting this on, one of the things that I think all the entities felt very strongly about was making sure that if we have program funds that or some of these other abilities listed in number 1, that we ensure and have to be able to support to the not only probably our individual elected officials, but also to the PPRTA Board of Directors, that we have to support and be able to show that we are going to complete all of our A-list projects. That was high on my mind, and I know high on minds of some of the other jurisdictions. And so I think, you know, for myself, whether or not that there's policies in regards to guardrails on the program funds, that's something that we would be doing internally, whether or not that occurs at the PPRTA Board of Directors level. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there, oh, okay. I just saw Travis. Let me go to you first and then back to you, Dave, after that, and then back to Reb.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I guess I appreciate all the different perspectives and viewpoints on this. And just to the point made a couple times about the city looking to replace all of our roadway funding from the city and using PPRTA money. You know, we're putting about $55 million in roadway maintenance in 2021 alone with 2C. So I think we're doing anything but looking to have the PPRTA substitute our funding for roads. We're certainly looking to complement that. But PPRTA makes up about 35% of the public works budget. 2C makes up about 23%. So I would just add that in there, that we're not looking to do that. We are adding 55 million in 2021 alone to roadway maintenance. Thank you.
Dave Zelnut.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Travis. Actually, you were anticipating what I was about to ask. So thank you for halfway reading my mind. Travis, could you maybe, I don't know, Gail, Jennifer, just address, I know there's a term, I like to use the word MOE, M-O-E, maintenance of effort.
Right.
And one thing, Gail or Jennifer, could you refresh my memory? There still is, isn't there? I think there is, this is a softball question, a maintenance of effort requirement in the next phase, correct? So the ability for, as Travis just shared, the ability for a local government to hijack the money or to reduce their contribution is still locked in with the MO, I presume, right?
There is, go ahead, Gail or Jennifer, if you're going to start to answer.
Dave, you're absolutely correct. That MOE is still in place. And in fact, I think you probably just missed the annual report on the city's MOE efforts along with the other member governments to demonstrate, what we still are contributing outside with the city's general fund budget to complete those tasks. So I don't know if Jennifer or Travis, if you have other things you want to add to that.
I would just add that the number that Gail just referenced, that does not even include the 55 million that I just mentioned. So if you want to include the 55 on top of that, then we're well beyond. And certainly there's a discussion about should that maintenance of effort be raised for RTA3. I certainly understand that. But no, you're absolutely right, Dave. There is a maintenance of effort. I think it's 20 some odd million for the city. Gail, you may know offhand.
I think it was actually even north of that. I can pull it up. I've got it sitting here.
So you're right, Dave. There is that maintenance of effort.
Yeah, no, thank you, Travis, for refreshing my ever-failing memory. One thing I think I even asked when you were in the room with Mayor Suthers not too long ago, He confirmed there's no escalator on the maintenance of effort number, right? That's flat and has stayed flat. Maybe this is the time that in keeping with what I'm sensing is consensus to move forward with it. Can we, or is there an escalator on the maintenance of effort number?
I think that's one of the items that we've been tasked to look at for an RTA 3.
Separate discussion, Dave, and the answer is split voices, but that is a whole separate subject.
The answer is no, there's no escalator.
Jim?
Go ahead, Reb.
I may be out of line here in terms of waiting. We have been on this discussion for the better part of 45 minutes, and we have not let the rest of the city staff, I say city, all the staff members that are on to provide the rest of this discussion. I don't know whether it's appropriate we table this or whatever, because we do have some time. And I'd like to recognize that those people have been waiting around. Jennifer, I know she's got some things. You've got a transit report to go through.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. And I was headed in that direction, but Gene Bray had his hand up, and then I'm gonna hold discussion after Gene finishes.
That's our time.
Just a quick item for Dave and Travis. I'd like to have a conversation with you folks offline concerning the maintenance of effort and what I saw happen with the initial PPRTA and the way the board elected to, in my opinion, skew the level of effort, particularly for the city.
Okay, so to Reb's point, we're beginning to repeat ourselves on a few things or repeat lines of thought on the same things. So is there anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to speak regarding item 1? And we haven't had any comments or anything from the recommendation on item D. I support that we not do that personally. I don't know whether anybody else has any opinion on that. But I would like to curtail or limit discussion on item number 1, program funds. And I would entertain a CAC recommendation, knowing that there's going to be a split, but we're not going to get a consensus on any of these, I don't think. So is there anyone who has not been speaking that would like to speak? Okay, not Reb, you're a new hand, or is that your old hand?
It's my old hand. You want?
Okay. All right. So item number 1, program funds. I'd like to someone or Rick, how would I handle this? Would we just say all those in favor of program funds, yay, and all those not in favor say no, or how do we do that?
Well, you could, 2 options would be just that the staff recommendation in green. You could have a motion and a second approve the staff recommendation in its entirety in green, or you can break it down into the ABCs.
Okay, so let's.
And could you scroll up so we can see as much of the green as possible? Or
Okay.
down?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so I'd like to propose the second thing is that we take 1A and we go down A, B, C, D, and let's do an up or down. And then I think if there is a down vote, I would say that we could put that like for C, for instance, there's multiple parts of that. We could further later break that down and maybe make that subcomponents, whereas you don't want all of C, but I want one of C or whatever. So that would be the way I think we're going to go. So let's go with 1A and that is to have, to leave the ability for a member entity to use their program, their money to create a program fund. It's similar to what we currently have. So let's say all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no.
No.
Okay. So how do you want, Rick? I think the ayes had it, but we want to get a specific vote.
Yes, a specific vote count, please.
Roll call. Jessica, do you have the, I didn't check off everybody that was present.
Could we, since there were less nays, could we just get the number of nays and then subtract it by the number, from the number of people who are CAC members who are here?
That's what I was going to suggest. Good suggestion, Bev. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so state your name for a nay, please. We won't disclose these to the board, but nay.
Jim Moore.
Jim Moore, nay. Okay.
Gene Bray, nay.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
So this is Rick. By my count, and I had a chat from a message from David Chestnutt saying he left the meeting at 2:30. So that, I think that put us down to 15. So that would make it 13-2.
Okay. All right, thank you. Item 1B, capital program. I don't need to read all of it. 1B. All those in favor of 1B, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Okay, 1B carries. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so what if we broke down C and we did kind of a C 1, 2, 3, 4? Gail, would it be appropriate to just split it into the state and federal discretionary grant? Matt, what's the difference here?
There's only one program we're actually considering.
Oh, okay, all right.
It is just one item.
Okay, so then, okay, thank you. So for item C, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Two nays. I hear Gene again.
Yes.
And
Who else?
Richard.
And Richard. Okay. Okay, two nays.
So that again would be 13-2.
Okay. And then a D, do we approve D as presented? All those in favor say aye.
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 Hold on a second. Let me read it again.
While you're reading that, can I ask Rick a question? How come we only have 15 voters? I thought we had a full. Never mind. You know what you're counting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How come we only have 15 votes? We got 2 votes that are 13-2, right? So that's 15. Where are the other 2? I know you mentioned that Dave Chestnutt left at 2:30.
And Karen Asplin is absent.
Okay.
Ann Ash, seat is now vacant. Joan is absent.
It's 3,
Carlos is absent.
4. But there were no alternates. I can understand.
Yeah, the alternates can vote.
I didn't even look at the list of alternates.
All right, we'll sort that out. Gene, are you done reading D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all those in favor of D as presented, say aye.
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 All those opposed to D as presented?
No.
No.
So we have 2 noes to not accept D as presented. So that would be the 13-2 again.
And remember, the item D is in the negative. So it's a separate CDOT companion project is not recommended. So an affirmative vote is voting to not have a separate CDOT companion project.
Anybody want to change their vote?
I do.
Okay, you do. So you're changing from a negative to a yes?
Jim, can I have a moment to reread it? You're saying yes means no.
It is, the recommendation is a negative recommendation that we not have that. So that's the reason I was using the terms as presented. So we would not have a CDOT companion project program. So if you're in favor of not having a CDOT companion project program, say aye. Aye.
No.
So you're in favor of having a CDOT companion project program?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 1 no. Anybody else? Okay. 1 vote for the companion project and the other vote, everybody else not having the companion project. Okay. Can we do item number 2 real quick? Has anybody got any hard over? If we're going to have a long discussion, I'm going to move on to the rest of the agenda. So having a separate A and B list. Are we still in favor of having an A and B list?
I move that we accept it, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so item 2F, staff recommendation is that we have both. And items, that's for A and B. And item C is that we not identify a completion date for the A list. That revenue will drive the completion.
I move that we vote, or I'm voting yes on both, A, B, and C.
Is there any discussion on item 2, the staff recommendations on item 2? Okay, all those in favor of the staff recommendations on item 2, A, B list, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right, we're going to stop discussion on RTA 3 matrix at that point. Thank you all. Continue to read, continue to think, categorize your thoughts, and we'll move on at next month and try to make some good discussion, good points. I appreciate everybody's research and work on that. All right, so let's move on. Item 6, capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. So Jessica, if you could roll back to the city stuff, I'd appreciate it. Gail, you gonna do this?
Can you tell me which page that is for you guys?
Yeah.
43. 43.
Thank you. I don't have my normal setup because of our internet glitch here. There it is.
All right, Jim, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, it's great. So Gail Sturdivant again, City of Colorado Springs. We're pleased to present the contract list. And this is an item that's a Centennial Extension construction contract that was initially presented to the CAC in April and then subsequently withdrawn from the board for further consideration. We're able to provide a more detailed description of the procurement process and the recommendation of award of the contract to FEMA Construction. As you can see here, we provided just more of a background on the overall delivery on the project. And what may not have been clear is that the Centennial Extension is actually been delivered or in the middle of being delivered in 3 phases. The first phase being that filling in that gap between the VA clinic and Mesa Road. And then the phase that it's currently in right now, which is the landfill cleanup and the earthwork that's being performed by MVS in advance of the construction of the street. This contract is actually for the construction of the road from Centennial from Van Buren down to the interchange there at Fontenarrow, and then providing some pedestrian improvements and overlaying that section that's kind of getting left kind of legacy in that middle. As you've previously heard, this is a 4-lane arterial section, 4-lane divided arterial section that does include stormwater utilities and some other multimodal improvements. With this project, it does have some extensive line work that's being put in by Colorado Springs Utilities. And we anticipate that the utilities would be reimbursing the city and then ultimately PPRTA for their portion of this contract. What may have not have been clear before is that with the city's procurement rules, we have some triggers for some more complex procurement processes. And this Centennial Extension Project construction contract did fall in that realm. So under our city's procurement rules, it triggered what's referred to as an RFP or request for proposal. And the reason being it had those triggers for several of these things that are on there, but more importantly, because there's a pre-construction component that's included in this construction contract. And then also it has some unusual technical pieces, and we wanted to have the opportunity to have some value engineering and some negotiations included with this. So going through the city's procurement process really determined with them that we needed to go through the best value selection process. One of the other things we may not have been clear why we triggered that RFP that I just mentioned is that because of the nature of the 3 phases of the project, the construction contract was bid out at the 90% construction plans, again, requiring that those professional services or pre-construction activities that's going to be necessary to coordinate with MVS, who's currently doing that phase 2 work. Both these contractors are going to be relying upon each other, one to hand over the grades that are going to be existing today. And in some areas, because we have some swelling soils that are being preloaded prior to construction, that there's some milestones that need to be triggered and handed off. Also, when we went through this proposal process, and as we set this up, we were going what's referred to as a CMCG, which is construction manager, general contractor piece. And it's really the contract firm we had where we as the city own and manage all the contracts, but they are required, the construction manager and the 2 general contractors in this particular case, to work together and meet particular milestones and needs. And we as the city, as the contract holder, can hold them accountable for that activity. As we went through and did the RFP selection, SEMA had demonstrated exceptional CMCG construction experience that was relevant to the project. They also demonstrated an unusually high clear understanding of the impacts and a very detailed schedule that was going to meet our needs and needs of PPRTA, but also was considerate of the needs of the business community, the VA clinic, and those that live nearby. Also within the procurement rules, as we made that selection based on best value, we did have the opportunity to go through and do a best and final offer, negotiate that price negotiate that price down from the initial offering. And their construction contract price still came in 16.8% below the engineer's estimate. And you can see the final ranking based on that overall process. I will mention, just so you're aware, that we had 7, as you can see, there were 7 proposals. We had 3 that were below the engineer's estimate, 1 that was right there at the engineer's estimate, and 3 that were above it. So we had a fairly good range of prices. There were 3 distinct groupings in that area. So with that, we're going to be taking this memo to the board, and if you have other considerations you'd like to make, to ask for the construction contract to be approved in the amount of $14,723,636.30. We now that since we're a little out of order, we currently had funds that were available in $13,371,435, and with the 21 budget, without the work that we did today, we have $9,117,276. And as I mentioned previously, Colorado Springs Utility will be reimbursing us for their portion of the work. And overall, just want to mention that the contractor was selected within the best value process based on their evaluation criteria, the solicitation factors, and the resulting scoring. I feel like selection of SEMA Construction is in the best interest of the city, and in this case, PPRTA as well, to execute this work. So with that, I am available to answer questions.
Reb, you had your hand up?
Yes. First question. This project, and I don't think it was ever estimated anywhere close to 24 million, which is on your page 1. And I'm just 24 million. I don't care about the other 6 places after the 24. And that's for 8,500 feet, 11, what is it? Less than 1 1/3 miles. Okay. That's a pretty damn expensive boulevard for nothing. When I say that, it's going to have houses and whatnot on either side. There's, I assume that's how it's being built. And I know I'm being assumptive. So my personal belief, literally, I know I was the one that I questioned, not the cost in original. I don't think it's anybody. We shouldn't be, the CAC shouldn't question why you made the decision. On an RFP, you aren't comparing just dollars to dollars. And it's your judgment, whether not you personally, but it's the city staff's job to evaluate those. And until you prove to the contrary, I'm going to accept your judgment. Okay, that's basically my opinion. The question, my only question in terms of it is how is the board of directors going to feel about it? Because personally, I don't like the $24 million price tag. It's not like West Colorado. It's like, it's not virgin territory because it's been used as a dump, but there are a lot more differences overall to the West Colorado and this one. And thank you, Gail, just as long as you understand, I'm not the one questioning your judgment.
Right. No, I appreciate that, Rob. And I will point out that $24 million, you're right, that was not the initial budget at the time of the ballot. I could pull that up for you, but that is the total project cost today.
Yeah, today. What's it going to be tomorrow if we keep raising prices as contractors?
Exactly. That was put up for discussion earlier.
Yes, I know.
Does anyone else have any questions for Gail? Again, to reiterate, I made this an info only because I anticipated it to be an update answering questions and concerns that we had last month. If there was anything in this update that changes the decision we made last month, which Rick, correct me, it was 10-4.
13-4.
13-4. If there's anything in this update that changes the CAC's recommendation, speak up. If not, I chose to run it back through the CAC with this additional information. 1, so that we stay informed of what the current situation is, and 2, to kind of follow the guidelines that things don't go straight to the board. If this had just not had any changes, we would have gone straight to the board. But I'd like to ask if there are any other changes. Okay, very good. Gail, thank you very much for this additional information and the additional work that went into this. Brian, are you still here?
No, he just left. I got it.
Yeah, I just saw that he did that. I don't know whether he was still on or not. Okay.
You caught me before I left. So.
Have you got a second? And we'll just skip to the agenda and go to transfer, so you can do your report if you want.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Brian Vituli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit with your monthly transit report. For our local fixed route service, we provided just under 145,000 trips in March of this year. That is slowed decrease of about 25% from March of 2020. And, you know, that percentage decrease actually looks a little bit better than what we've been seeing over the past several months. But, you know, March of 2020 was kind of when we were just starting to get into the beginning of the pandemic. And so while that percentage decrease is encouraging, it's, you know, it's probably going to be similar to that over the next several months, because we're going to start comparing this year to last year when we were, you know, operating with reduced service and many fewer passengers and customers. So for our ADA paratransit service, it's Metro Mobility. We provided a little over 7,200 trips in March of 2021. So that's down 4.2% from March of 2020. Our specialized paratransit taxi choice option, we just started to operate that again last month. So, you know, those numbers are still fairly low. And finally, for our van pool services, we operated seven vans in March of 2021, with 37 active riders making 943 one-way trips. So that's a decrease from March of 2020 of a little over 56%. And the project update, this is similar to what you've been seeing the last couple months, but we did just implement our spring service change at the end of April. It was kind of a, you know, phased implementation. This Route 37, the new route to Amazon and the airport, will be starting June 13th. The only item that we were going to implement on April 25th was the extension of Route 36 from the Ruxton Avenue roundabout to the Serpentine Drive roundabout. But the city of Manitou Springs has the West Side Manitou Avenue construction project ongoing now, and it is still a construction scene, and there are no places to put bus stops, and we don't want our vehicles caught in all of the congestion from the construction traffic. So Dole's been able to give us, you know, a tentative start date of August 1st. He's hoping that either construction will be done or will be at a level where we will be able to extend the route. And, you know, as you remember, Route 36 is a seasonal service. It will operate through the end of September. So at least we'll get, you know, if we can stick to that August 1st implementation date, we can get two good months of that route extension in. And, you know, we are also, the city of Colorado Springs is paying to keep that second bus operating on the weekends on Route 33. So that's maintaining our 10-minute frequency, which we feel is really needed for that service. So that's all on that. And I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Brian, this is Larry. I do have one question. And Jim's asked this question and several other people have asked this question. You know what's coming. Where do you stand on getting a new terminal downtown?
Well, I'll give you a similar answer that you've been hearing for the last couple of years. You know, we are inching closer. We are making some progress, but we're still not in a position to make that public, unfortunately. But hopefully within a couple months, we'll be able to make an announcement on that. But thank you for you know, asking those questions. It is important. It's important for our community. It's important for our customers. It's something we've been trying to do for over 2 decades. And yeah, we'd still like to get it done. Just right now, we still can't make it public. But thank you.
So the answer is, as the opportunities around the new museum and soccer museum continue to progress, the price continues to go up. So you don't need you don't need to say anything, Brian. Yeah, I got it. All right. Any other questions for Brian?
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Very much. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. I kind of jumped to 7A there. So let's go back to item 6B, El Paso County. Jennifer?
Hey, Jim?
Yes.
But my 2 cents worth on 6A, number one, I changed my vote, or I would if we had voted on it.
Okay.
And of the one of the, what was 13-4, I would be 14-3, okay? And I do it quote informed.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to
Jennifer.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. We have 5 items on our contracts list today. The first one is our 2021 concrete contract purchase order. It's with Ugelnick Enterprises and with a maximum amount of $1.5 million, and that is from our maintenance program. The second maintenance program contract is with Martin Marietta Materials with a contract and purchase order for $5 million for the 2021 program. The third item is for a utility relocation related to our phase 1 of our Beacon Light Road improvements. And that is with Intermountain Rural Electric Association for approximately $115,000. And that is from our capital program. In addition to that, we are getting under design for our phase 2 of our Beacon Light Road improvement project, our final design for phase 2. And that project is outside of the intersection and the coordination that we are working on with CDOT at the interchange. And this is essentially final design for the remainder of the project. And that is with Michael Baker and a contract amendment with them for about $475,000. And then finally, contract amendment and purchase order with the Monument Road safety improvements. We are wrapping up some final costs on that. And so that is for $30,000. If you have any questions on those items, be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Jennifer on the county?
Yeah. This is Larry. Not hearing any questions. I move for approval for the 5 contracts that Jennifer has just presented here.
I second, but I'd like a question. I really do approve it. I want a clarification. Your line item 3, the Beacon Light road improvements, is that just the cost of putting the stuff in? It's not purchasing right away. Is that correct?
Correct. That's just final design support for that second phase of the project.
All right. I just wanted to clear it up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear, we had phased the design of the project, and so that's and we are phasing construction of the project, and that is just because we had accelerated the northerly part so that we could coordinate that project with the CDOT interchange project.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. I still second it. All 5 items.
Okay, so we have a Dave Zelenak.
I just want to add a comment before we do the final vote here. I want to thank and congratulate Jennifer, the whole staff there at El Paso County for an extraordinary job putting this together and for all the work they're doing. I'm not sure, Jennifer, if you have enough opportunities to pass along thanks and congratulations, but I know you're doing a great job and the whole staff is as well. So thank you for all the hard work. But I do plan to support this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to so for the county's 5 projects. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for being patient. We have another project for Manitou Springs, but I just looked through the attendees. It doesn't appear as Dole is still on.
Joel had to sign off for another meeting with Colorado Springs. He said if you need more information outside of his memo, then we can text him and have him jump back on. So.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions on the request for project for Manitou Springs? Not hearing any. Do I have a motion?
I move for approval of Manitou's projects.
Gene Bray, second.
Tony Joya, Gene Bray. Thank you, gentlemen. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Manitou's project, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Item 7C, City of Colorado Springs requests to revise policy 12 for centennial extension.
Hello, Jim. Gail Sturdivant again with the City of Colorado Springs. The city respectfully requests that the CAC recommend approval to add the Centennial Extension construction project to part of Policy 12, which allows individual contract threshold to change to $100,000 or 10% of the aggregate bid total. Most recent project we did this on was for the Platte Avenue Bridge project. And with that, I will entertain questions.
For our newer members, just we have a dollar limit on change orders for projects that, and they need to come to the CAC and the board for approval over a certain dollar value. On these large extended projects, they come and request an opportunity to extend that dollar value so that they don't have to keep coming back to us with every little change. And so this is recorded permanently in policy number 12, and any changes to this are all documented. So if you want to see a history, Rick can help you get to that memo.
Jim?
Yes.
I move that we recommend the approval of this to the board.
Okay, we have a motion from Reb.
Second, Tony.
Tony for second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 7D is a change order and property acquisition report. It's an informational item. Any questions for the city on the change order and property acquisition report? Hearing none. Item 7E, same for the county. Informational item, their change order property acquisition report. Any questions for Jennifer?
Move
Hearing.
to approve. Tony.
Okay, it's informational, but thank you, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Let's move on to item number 8, report of recent board actions. Rick, you're on.
Memo should be self-explanatory. Be glad to take any questions.
Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. Agenda items for next meeting. Anybody have any burning subjects that they need to cover?
This is Tom. Recommend that we move our discussion about PPRTA 3 up to right after the financial reports again.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Anybody vehemently opposed to that? Not hearing any. Okay, great. We'll Rick, you got that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 10, communications. Okay, I have one for me. Just full disclosure to members of the CAC. I've been appointed to a couple of committees, community activity, community action committees that I just need to, representing the RTA. They have that beside my name on the roster of members. And so I just wanted to make the rest of the committee aware. I am been appointed to Connect COS, which is the city's planning transportation planning document. I think it's probably the first time it's been updated for a number of years. But I sit on that. And I'm also have been asked to be part of the Platte Avenue corridor study that we've discussed here a couple of times. I do not see any conflict of interest or perceive any conflict of interest in either of these projects. Should I perceive there is one, I will either not vote. If there is a vote, I will excuse myself from that vote within that committee. Or if I feel like that the presentation being made to this body compromises me in some way, I will excuse myself from any of that. But I just wanted to let all of you know I've been asked to be part of or appointed to be on these two organizations. So if anybody's got any heartburn with that, please speak up.
Glad you are.
Just one question, Jim. This is Larry. Is that due to the fact that you're the chairman of the PPRTA CAC? Or do you know?
I really don't know, Larry. For some of you may know, I've been involved in transportation planning issues around the city in various forms or another, and various stakeholder groups. And for some reason, I got asked to be part of these. I wanted to be. I'm enjoying it, but I have no reason. I do not think it was because of the chair, but I can verify that and get back to you and let you know.
Jim, I hope you're being appropriately compensated.
I do have a beer after long meetings, yes.
I asked that question, what's the pay? I'm going to apply.
Jim?
Yes.
This is Rick. I will also be sitting on that board representing Kono.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. All right. I don't think this other one has anything to, the other one I'm involved in doesn't have anything to do with the CAC or transportation. So Rick, I did get on to the COG, the Citizens Outreach Group for the county. So, okay. Any other comments, questions, communications from anybody? I appreciate your patience. I know it's a long, drawn out meeting today, and next month we've got to get back through into that matrix. The timeline on getting this done as and Gail, this is for you and Jennifer, as Rick Sonnenberg and I were talking earlier today. I guess this decision on this matrix somewhat drives your the construction of your A and B list and the formulation of how you're going to go about doing that, and develop your project list, and also the time frame of that. So if this extends beyond next month, if it impacts, extending beyond next month impacts your process of developing your list or your time frame that you have to work with within your Board of County Commissioners and City Council and CTAB and all that, please let us know, so that if we bog down, if it's not a big deal, we need to slide it another month, at least Rick and us will know that.
Yeah, I think we're okay on the project list. And Jessica, if I'm in a position, I'd like to share kind of a timeline graphic I used for CTAB yesterday that kind of shows some of that input. So the reason why I wanted to show this screen, this is what we shared with CTAB yesterday to give them an idea kind of of the formation of PPRTA 3. And there's really two things that we can do in parallel for a little bit longer. What we're doing right now is discussing the formation of what's going to be the principles of the ballot language or how RTA 3 will operate in the future. what we'll be looking at is development of the scoring criteria in the fourth quarter of 2021, and really going back in the city's case, back to CTAB in that quarter and working through that time into the first quarter of 2022 as we finalize that list. While we're doing that, we're actually going, in the city's case, Connect COS, that's going to be a big contributor to our projects. We're doing some coordination with the county and some others to kind of start developing that list already. What we could use in the meantime is if there's input or guidance from the CAC, of which you would like us to consider as we put together this scoring criteria, we would appreciate that. So that may be something that we could get potentially by the July meeting for consideration. If you need to, we could share with what the criteria were used in PPRTA 2 as kind of a basis, but if there's something in particular you'd like us to consider, we'd like that. So kind of two things that are in parallel. We really need to be wrapped up with the formation stuff. I think it could drag into at the end of Q3 potentially, kind of depending on what the guidance is, and the discussion is back and forth between the CAC and board, but we do need to take some of these same recommendations to the board, and there may be some work in parallel. And amongst yourselves, and Rick, I'll defer to you on this if there's some joint discussion that needs to happen in the future.
Jim or Gail?
Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility you get just text or email that screen you just showed, number one? And number two, if you talk to Jennifer, would you ask her? Because the two principal components to PPRTA 3 are still the city and the county. And as best we can, as far as the CAC, we'd like to accommodate them, and if need be, quote, make special arrangements to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Jennifer, if you're still on, maybe you want to jump in and give the county's perspective on this, but I think that we're both, even though the boards and committees she goes to are a little bit different, the general process, I believe it's the same, but are you there, Jennifer?
That's affirmative.
Okay.
And in fact, we've actually gotten input from our Highway Advisory Committee already in regards to some of our scoring. And so we're kind of developing, you know, I think we're probably both doing similar things where we are continuing to develop that project list, do scoring all at once, and starting to do some estimating. So this is an iterative process, and I just want to make sure that, you know, we, the county, the city, and as we go along, all the other jurisdictions will all be working very, very closely together. You know, this is a regional ballot measure, and so we are going to be working together to make sure it's successful.
Thank you, Jennifer.
The answer is yes, Reb, to your first question. I will email this to Rick for distribution, but please be cognizant that it was prepared for CTAB and highlights some city processes and groups, not necessarily the county.
Rick, you got any last? Thank you, Gail. And Jennifer.
Yes, I do, Jim. Thanks. I just want everybody to be comfortable with my plan to not put this on the board agenda for next week. Is everybody comfortable with my not putting it, because there are only 2 items? In other words, wait until the CAC has been through the complete list before sending it to the board.
Yes.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got anything? One last shot? Thank you all for your time and patience and cooperation. So have a great afternoon, a great evening, and a great week, and we'll see you next month.
See you.